Well, I'm very excited. We have a Muggle Ward with us from Destiny Quest. Hello, Michael. How are you?
Not too bad, thanks. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. Very good. And now, Destiny Quest. I've just been looking at your very impressive website. Uh, Very nice. Very. Go and check it out if you haven't seen it already. And you've got quite a few titles, and it does look like you've been at this for years. But tell me how long you've been doing Destiny Quest, what you've got you into it,
It's
and
over
I'll
sort of
ask
10
many
years.
other questions.
Oh, sorry, yeah, it's over 10.
Oh, you're frozen now. Oh, you froze there, Michael. Sorry.
Sorry. Yes, I've been at it for over about 10 years. That's when my sort of first one, Legion of Shadow, came out. So, yeah, so I mean, yeah, I've been at it for quite a while, I guess. Hopefully getting the knack of it by now, I think.
Yes, I think so. So I'm going to take you way back to when you were I'm guessing you were probably about 8, 9, 10 when you picked up your first game book.
Yeah, I was just thinking about this actually, probably a little bit younger because I remember the Edward Packard choose your own adventure books like is it Buy a Balloon to the Sahara and The Cave of Time. I just remember renting them out of the library. So I think I might have discovered them before I did Warlock of Firetop Mountain.
Oh,
So they were my first sort of introduction to kind of like interactive books. But yeah, obviously, like I think everybody else, Warlock of Firetop Mountain, the minute I got hold of that as a sort of 9, 10-year-old, and I was just kind of getting into D&D as well, Dungeons and Dragons. I was kind of fascinated by that whole sort of genre and the little miniatures. So I think Warlock of Firetop Mountain was a really cool first experience for me in terms of that kind of solo experience. And then obviously I was sold on that, and I started collecting all those books. And yeah, so when I came to write Destiny Quest, it was kind of quite nice because I never really intended in my life to ever write a game book. It wasn't something I was planning to do, but it was just kind of born out of I'm more of kind of a computer gamer now. And I was, about 10 years ago, I was addicted to a game called World of Warcraft, which was like an online role-playing game. And literally, I just had this moment when I just wanted to encapsulate that experience of playing an online RPG in a book format. And that's when I sort of went back to my sort of kind of, those sort of teenage days of sitting and rolling dice and, you know, picking your pages and stuff. That's kind of like
did you
the
have those
obvious
books still,
place.
or did you have those
I
books, or
do.
did you have to go
I think
and?
they're in a box somewhere actually, because I have, I've just moved into a flat now, so I have less. Well, I have quite a lot of shelves, but I mean, there's, but yeah, they're all kind of in a box. But I mean, I still have my sort of original ones, and my favorite, which is Death Trap Dungeon, which I still to this day love that cover of the Blood Beast on the front, and
Yeah.
that's my favorite one. So, but yeah, I remember them fondly, and that's what gave me when I was thinking about how can I create this idea of this kind of open world quest driven RPG in a book, and it was an obvious kind of marrying that sort of kind of solo game book play of the turning the pages. But I kind of like to think I sort of brought it up to a date a little bit with a lot more sort of kind of interactive combat. You know what I mean? A lot more sort of strategy involved in the dice rolling, and you actually have a hero where you get equipment and items and you equip them, and they give you special abilities, and then you can combo your abilities together, and you fight sort of monsters with different abilities. So I kind of tried to make it a simple system, but one that has a lot more depth than your average sort of fighting fantasy.
So you said you came back to it. So how long was the gap between you were playing it and then you said, "Okay, I'm going to start writing an
Oh,
adventure book"?
World of Warcraft or fighting fantasy?
The one, the Destiny Quest. So going from playing them as a child or a teenager
Oh, right.
to,
Well, I mean,
how long
I
was the
mean, I've
gap?
never. Yeah, there was a big gap because, to be honest, probably, once I discovered Dungeons and Dragons and got into all that kind of stuff, I probably didn't keep up with the game books. Do you know what I mean? So it wasn't
Mhm.
until I was actually starting to research Destiny Quest that I actually realized that, there's about, God knows how many books are there now in the fighting fantasy range? I mean, is it about a million? I don't know. But,
Yeah.
it's just, and I only really remember the original sort of 10 or 12, you know what I mean? And they're the ones that I probably played. And then I never really went back. I never really carried on it as a hobby. You know what I mean? So yeah, so we're talking. I don't want to give my age away too much, but probably a bit of a 30. so gap between, you know,
Look, it's a substantial time. That's why I'm not going to pry any
yeah,
further.
yeah.
But so, were you writing in between, or what were you doing in between that time? Were you sort of role playing and writing modules and just think personal games?
I hadn't really played sort of any kind of D&D stuff since kind of university. And but I was always still always been into fantasy, reading fantasy novels, and Destiny Quest wasn't the first thing I've tried to get published. I've written other stuff that I've tried, so it's not wasn't my first project, but
Yeah.
so I have written other stuff. But yeah, I mean, I've always been writing. That's always been my ambition, was to get published, and it's my joy to write. So it's just kind of nice and sort of funny that in the end, Destiny Quest was the thing that kind of worked out for me, really. You know what I mean? I should have gone back to my roots earlier, I guess.
Wow. So, how many books have you got out now with Destiny Quest?
It's there's 4 in the main Destiny Quest range. So these are the actual game books. As you can see, they're
Well,
quite
look at the
a
size
little
of
bit
that.
bigger than your
That's a
average.
wedge, Michael.
Yes, yeah. So I've got 4 in the actual official series, and then just recently, which just came out on, well, I just did a Kickstarter, and it's just come out now, is this little sort of companion volume, the World Companion.
Fantastic.
And this is literally just if you remember Titan, the book that came out to accompany Fighting Fantasy, it was kind of like it explored the world, and the characters and all that lot. So this is kind of the same thing. So it's kind of like an illustrated book with kind of maps, and so it's just kind of like if you're a bit of a geek of Destiny Quest, then it's just kind of like a little extra book that gives a lot more depth to the background stuff that, believe it or not, I can't fit into one of these because there's just too much good action and stuff in.
Wow. So you got four titles and the
Yeah, 4, and I'm literally working on the 5th one now. In fact, if I look a bit bleary-eyed, it's because I've been working for about 7 hours. It's literally right there on my computer screen right now. I'm working on Destiny Quest 5, so so I'm kind of working on that full time at the minute, just to kind of get it done. And then I'm hoping.
Is this a set number of books that you have in your mind? And I don't know if people say how many that might be.
It all kind of got a bit derailed though, because when I wrote the Raiders of Dune Sea, I ended up not being able to fit everything I wanted into this volume. So I then decided I'd have to do like a sequel to it. And then that sequel itself is actually expanded into 2 more books, if that makes any sense. So this has actually become a trilogy that I never really meant to happen, but it's just.
You've done a Tolkien then.
Yeah, and I don't know why I try to make life difficult for myself, but I just do. And it's like, you look at the size of these, but you wouldn't believe that I can't fit all my ideas in, but I can't. You know what I mean? I think maybe I'm just too wordy. That's my problem, But and also the difficulty with interactive fiction as well is because obviously you have to do all the different options. You know what I mean? And if you are a bit of a wordy author, you do end up writing a hell of a lot of material that probably, when somebody actually plays through it, they're not going to read it all, which is frustrating. But it's just the way it is, isn't it?
Well, I'm sure people do read through it as well. I mean, it sounds like you've got quite a few fans already in these 10 years that you've been doing.
Probably about 6,
Okay.
I'm a mum.
That's loads.
Yeah.
So obviously you're writing the 4th one, sorry, the 5th one at the moment.
5th, yeah.
And can you tell us a little bit about it? How does it differ, or how has it follow on from the last books?
Yeah, so this is the first. So this 5th book is the first one that you take your hero from this. So this book, Raiders of Dune Sea, you actually take your hero and you actually carry them across. So all their previous knowledge, their abilities, their items transfer across. So it's literally like if you bought like an add-on for one expansion for, say, a computer game. You literally. So this is the first time in the series that you've been able to sort of do that. And so the next book, which is called Wrath of Ragnarok, literally where the last book finishes, which I can't really say because it spoils, but where the last book finishes, it literally carries on straight away, really. Goes straight into a prologue that kind of carries, so it's almost seamless, really, in a way. And so it's literally telling the sort of middle act of this sort of grand story. So I mean, I am introducing some new elements into it. Don't know whether I can talk about everything, but just kind of trying to make it. I've tried to make every book kind of feel fresh and interesting. So you know, without overcomplicating it. But I always try and introduce like a new element or something just to keep,
Are you
you
in a
know,
different region, or are you?
you're in the same region, but a lot has happened, which people will know
Yeah,
once they've got to the end of Raiders of June Sea. There's quite a kind of cataclysmic event occurs, and so you're kind of starting in. So I think that's what would be quite interesting for readers of Raiders of June Sea to revisit these characters, having well, based on everything that's happened in this region. And so I don't know whether you know, but Destiny Quest has these these maps.
yeah, I
So
saw those.
you
They're
choose,
fantastic.
yeah, so you
Lovely.
choose your quests from these maps. So um, yeah, so again in the next book there will be maps, but it'll be interesting that the Wrath of Ragnarok map is kind of taking an element. It's kind of taking the region from one of these, zoomed in, and it will show you what's happened as a result of what happened at the end of Raiders of June Sea, if that makes sense.
Fantastic.
So it's all very
And Michael,
desert based.
oh, that sounds really exciting. And do you have certain characters that carry on through not only the obviously the adventurer, but any kind of characters that they'll keep coming across, or
Yeah, I think that's what I'm really enjoying about writing this next book, is because you have like a kind of group of companions in Raiders of June Sea that you sort of meet over time, and you become quite close together as a kind of close knit group of adventurers. And what I'm really enjoying with book 5 is seeing the really delving deep into those character relationships, you know,
yeah,
and what I'm using, which I think is quite a common thing now in game books, is, you know, using keywords, so that if based on certain decisions or dialogue options you choose,
mm,
you get like a keyword which you record, and then later on you might be asked, do you have this keyword? And if you do, then you might have a slightly different character interaction, or a different outcome might occur.
yeah,
And so I'm finding that really interesting in this book to kind of explore, you know, this kind of group of characters I'm trying to make sort of real, like, you know, and them going through, you know, the kind of maybe like the sort of trauma of what's happened, and their ambitions and their hopes, and not, they're kind of not always on the same page, you know. So
yeah.
sometimes you might have to make decisions between who do I side with, and what's the right decision here. And I think that's something that I've not really kind of delved too deeply into in previous
I think it's
books.
interesting that I don't think there's many game books, well, none that I can think of the top of my head, that really delve into characters. It's normally
Yeah.
about the journey and the adventurer. But yeah, I think it'll be very interesting to see how that develops for you. And what's your writing process? Do you I always ask if every person does a game book. Do you have big maps on the wall, or do you use a computer system, or are you more old fashioned and have the crossing section that you just cross off as you go along?
Yeah, I can actually show you how bad I am, because I'm completely non-technical. Can I show this without this is me marking off
Yeah, yeah,
the numbers. You know, I don't use any software. I don't use any. I kind of write, because the thing that makes Destiny Quest a little bit easier is because the story's split into quests. You know,
yeah,
so so I write it. So it's easy for me to write it in sections. Does that make sense? So I'm not sort of
yeah,
starting at the beginning and just writing the whole thing. So I can sort of compartmentalize it in my brain a little bit easier, working it through like that.
yeah,
But I do literally just kind of write it in just the whole quest in a Word document. I sign the numbers and then I mark them off on my big chart. Um, and that's it, really. There's no grand, massive charts or spreadsheets or anything like that. I do use spreadsheets actually to record, because there is the game element side of it. So, you know, there's the items in the books, they have different attributes that they give your character, and I have to keep quite a record of all those as I'm working through, because that's kind of like where the balancing comes in. So that
yeah.
takes a bit of work.
That's good. And do you have? Actually, I was seeing something about your books and saying, and the website was mentioning how you could really tailor your character and make it really sort of different to each time you, well, not each time you play it, but make it different to someone else who's playing the same book.
Sure.
Can you tell us a little bit how about you create your characters and how that works?
Yeah. So when you start your adventure, you're kind of like a sort of little bit of a nobody. You know, you're sort of a bit of a blank slate. And then as you acquire items as you play through, these items have abilities attached to them. That makes sense. So as you're equipping these items, you're sort of building up these different abilities, and then at a certain part of the every adventure, you get to make a choice between sort of three kind of character classes. So you can become a mage, a warrior, or a rogue, and they sort of then influence kind of how you then proceed through the book in terms of the abilities you have access to. And with each book, and obviously I think I've got better with Raiders of Dune Sea and Wrath of Ragnarok in making these characters more distinct, so that they really do have a completely different sort of play style. Where, you know, for example, like rogues are kind of probably more sort of high damage, single target attackers that tend to have quite a few abilities that passive damage that sort of bleeds away an opponent's health. Warriors tend to probably, you know, kind of have more sort of cleave attacks that hit more, you know, multiple opponents. And they also have armor, which they can sort of manipulate. And then mages, it's kind of more about they can spend their magic. So they have their magic points and they spend their magic and choose strategically whether they want to do like sort of big burst spells or cast enchantments or heal. And it's so it's kind of, so each one hopefully has a different sort of play style. And then within each one, there's obviously different ways you can actually customize your character. So even like two rogues won't necessarily be the same. One person might focus on more of a fast sort of dagger build, and another one might be more sort of into finesse and swords and doing higher damage. You know what I mean? It's there's quite. I try to make a lot of different options. You know, for this sort of
It's
real.
quite interesting. When you started talking about it, you talk about the World of Warcraft and how that kind of made you.
That's my big influence. Yeah.
So, yeah, that's really interesting. So you're published. If you've got a publishing company that has taken the books
well,
on,
the first three books were published by Glance, and then I'm now publishing from Raiders of Dune Sea. I published myself, and I'm publishing Wrath of Ragnarok myself as well. So I'm publishing them myself now.
Oh, that's good. Okay.
Which gives me great
big difference.
Which just gives me greater control. In some ways, I probably earn better royalties out of it. And I don't know. I do actually prefer to have that kind of level of control, you know, over my books. But you know, it's just the problem with big publishers. They want huge sales constantly. Do you know what I mean? You know, and we're talking really big, and sometimes you can't always match, you know, their sort of levels of expectation. You know, so that's just the way it was, really. So, but I mean, they're still publishing my first three books, and you know, we still work together on promotions and stuff. So
that's good.
It's kind of a happy marriage.
Nothing wrong with self-publishing, you know.
No. And I, you know, I self-published this. You know, this is my first hardback that I've self-published, which I was a bit nervous about, but you know, it's come out okay. You know, and and also, you know, when you can also do your own Kickstarter as well. You know, that was my first attempt at a Kickstarter with this World Companion, and it's nice to be able to manage all of that yourself, and it gives you a good sort of ability to kind of promote your work, because, you know, dare I say it, the big publishers probably don't give you a lot of time, really. You know what I mean? I was a bit, it can be disappointing. You know, they have a lot of authors to promote, and you're probably quite low down on the pecking order, and it's nice to
and
just
I think it's
a
nice way. I think it's also a very nice way for you to connect with your readership. You know,
exactly,
when you're selling through a publisher, you don't know who they are.
Exactly. So doing
literally
things like Kickstarter, the Kickstarter, you're in direct, you know, communication with people, and you can offer them like little goodies. I mean, I do these little loot cards and various things, and you know, it's just nice to kind of give back to the community that support you, and so I'm looking forward to the next one. You know.
Is that, obviously you're book 5 at the moment? Is that going to end up being a Kickstarter, or are you just going to publish it? Or
I want to do a Kickstarter again. I was kind of hoping, literally, I've been thinking about it today. Actually, I was hoping to maybe run it in November, but I don't know whether that might be just rushing things a little bit much. So it might end up being February next year, just so that I have all the art assets, you know, ready. My cover will be done by the end of October. I've got a fantastic Italian artist lined up to do that, so I'm really looking forward to that. But I was kind of hoping to get it out on Kickstarter by the end of this year, but it might be just, I think it's better to be prepared and have everything ready than to sort of rush into a big sort of campaign. So
no, definitely, that's good. That's great. So other than the books, do you have anything else planned? Have you thought you'd like to do an RPG, where multiplayer RPG, or take it into video games, take it into the World of Warcraft style.
Well, I mean,
Can
I'd
you,
love to. If anybody wants to
even
make
if
me
it's
an
not
offer,
happening, can you? Yeah, would you like
yeah.
it to do that? Yeah.
I mean, I can see like it being very sort of Diablo-esque kind of,
Mm.
if you know, sort of top down. I have loads of ideas for the way the Destiny Quest could be transported into, because I mean, obviously that was its influence in the first place. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It probably would make a great mobile game as well. But I mean, I've had occasional chats with people and companies, but nothing's ever really come to fruition yet. So I kind of
Yeah.
take it all with a bit of a pinch of salt and just wait for that great moment when, you know, I get the film deal and the you know, the computer game as well. That'd be great, you know.
Well, if Fighting Fantasy hasn't got it, or Lone Wolf
Well,
hasn't
that's
got it,
true.
you know,
Yeah, true,
it's
yeah,
we're in good company.
yeah, that's true. That's
That's
true.
fantastic. So, Michael, how can people get in contact with you, or if you don't want to get in contact, how can they buy your products? What's the best way for them to
Well, the
find
best
out
thing
more?
to do is just to, like you mentioned, my website, which is www.destiny-quest.com, and on there it's got links. There's a buy page, got links to Amazon, you know, and you know, all your sort of online retailers, and then there's like a how to play guide on there, and there's also links to my Facebook and Twitter on there, which I tend to be fair, most people now kind of, most of my fan base has kind of gravitated over to kind of like, you know, sort of Facebook and Twitter now rather than using my forums
Yeah,
on my website. I think that's just one of those changing times, isn't it? So I tend to use Facebook more to interact, you know, with news updates and stuff like that. So that's probably the best
yeah,
place to kind of keep up with what's going on with, you know, Destiny Quest.
fantastic. Are you doing any sort of live shows? Are you going to any sort of games conventions
I'm
this
going
year?
to Fighting Fantasy Fest,
I will see you
which
there
is
then.
is it the third, yeah, 3rd of September.
3rd of September. Yeah,
Yeah. So yeah,
fantastic.
so I'm signing June C, and I'm signing World Companion as well while I'm there, and got
Brilliant,
some of the loot cards and stuff. So I've, you know, got a table there, so that'll be interesting.
brilliant. It's going to be fun. I will see you there then.
Yeah, cool.
Uh, Michael Ward, thank you so much for coming and joining us at International Game Book Day, and hopefully see you soon. Thank you again.
Cool, thanks.